The sky was heavy with low, gray clouds that morning as Martha stepped outside, her worn slippers brushing across the damp concrete. In her hands, she carried a battered metal bowl filled with scraps, just as she did every day for Bruno, her loyal companion who had stood by her side through years of solitude. She called his name softly, expecting the familiar sound of paws against the ground. But what she saw made her breath hitch in her throat. Bruno was crouched low in the farthest corner of the garden, chewing intently on something. At first glance, Martha thought it might be an old bone he dug up or a scrap brought in by a stray cat. But there was something different about the way he guarded it, a deep, guttural growl rumbling from his chest as he gnawed and licked at it with unsettling focus. Curious and a little uneasy, Martha approached. As she drew closer, her blood ran cold. The object gripped between Bruno's powerful jaws wasn't from an animal. It was a human bone, yellowed and cracked with age, sinews of dried flesh still clinging in patches like a grotesque reminder of a life long lost. Martha dropped the bowl with a loud clatter, the contents scattering across the dirt. Her hands flew to her mouth as a strangled gasp escaped her lips. For a moment, the world spun around her. The cheerful garden she had tended for years now seemed alien, haunted. Bruno, startled by the noise, darted into a clump of banana trees, still clutching the grisly prize. Heart hammering against her ribs, Martha stumbled back inside to grab the phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number for the police, unaware that this single discovery would unravel a darkness buried beneath her home for over a year, and that her faithful old dog had just unearthed a chilling secret no one was ever meant to find. A patrol car pulled up just minutes after Martha's trembling call. Two officers stepped out, their boots crunching over the gravel as they approached cautiously. One of them, a man in his late 30s with a stern face and careful eyes, introduced himself as Lieutenant Ryan. Without wasting a moment, he pulled on a pair of latex gloves and knelt down where Martha had first spotted Bruno. Ryan studied the gnawed object with clinical detachment. After a few seconds, he looked up, his expression grave. "This isn't animal remains," he said quietly, almost as if speaking louder would disturb the dead. "This is human." Martha staggered back, pressing herself against the wall of the house for support. Her mind reeled, trying to reconcile the normalcy of her quiet garden with the horror slowly unfolding within it. Bruno, now leashed but restless, pulled insistently toward the cluster of banana trees where he had hidden his grisly find. Watching the dog's behavior, Ryan made a swift decision. He ordered the small backyard secured and followed Bruno's lead. The dog pawed frantically at a patch of earth near the broken fence, growling low, eyes locked on the ground as if possessed by some ancient instinct. The officers grabbed shovels and began to dig. The soil was surprisingly compact, hard as stone, as if time itself had conspired to seal away the secret buried beneath it. After what felt like an eternity, the first foul scent of decay breached the air. One of the younger officers gagged and turned away, hand over his mouth. Beneath the thick dirt lay a rotting, tattered burlap sack, barely holding together under the weight of time and moisture. Ryan carefully tore it open, and what spilled out turned the world to silence. A partial human skeleton, brittle and crumbling, the skull cracked, strands of what had once been hair still tangled among the fibers of the sack. Within hours, forensic units swarmed the small backyard. The preliminary report was sobering. The remains belonged to a young woman, estimated to have been dead for over a year. When dental records came back, they confirmed what many feared. Emily Parker, a bright 24-year-old who had vanished without a trace 15 months earlier. Her name was now tied forever to this unassuming little yard and the faithful old dog who had refused to let her be forgotten. As the forensic team worked through the grim remains, Lieutenant Ryan turned his attention toward the woman who had unknowingly lived above a grave. Martha sat inside her small, dim living room, hands folded tightly on her lap, her eyes swollen from shock and exhaustion. Through slow, gentle questioning, Ryan learned more about her life. Alone since her husband's death, her only son, Daniel, had supposedly left for overseas work nearly 3 years ago. Martha spoke of him with a mother's stubborn hopefulness, how he would call now and then, how he still sent money to help with the house. Yet something gnawed at Ryan's instincts. he requested Daniel's travel documents. When the copies arrived, his unease hardened into alarm. The documents were flawed, official on the surface, but lacking critical marks of authenticity. A deeper check with immigration confirmed the worst. Daniel had never officially left the country. There were no border crossings, no employment records abroad. The thought was chilling. If Daniel hadn't left, where had he gone? And more importantly, who had been contacting Martha all this time, feeding her voice calls, video messages, and quiet reassurances? While Ryan wrestled with these questions, Bruno once again became restless. On a hunch, the team decided to take him along during a sweep of the nearby area. Their search led them nearly 12 kilometers away, to a dilapidated house long abandoned after the death of its elderly owner. The roof sagged, the windows were boarded up, and the air smelled of mildew and rust. As they approached, Bruno lunged at the door, snarling and pawing at the ground. Inside, the silence was thick, broken only by the creak of the floorboards under their cautious steps. Bruno sniffed feverishly along the cracked concrete floor, then stopped at a far corner where the wall met the ground. He began clawing furiously. There, hidden beneath a layer of dust and grime, a faint reddish-brown smear trailed along the floor. A long-dried blood stain, invisible to the casual eye, but undeniable in the harsh beam of a forensic flashlight. Ryan felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. This place held another piece of the puzzle. And if blood had been spilled here, the truth was far uglier and far closer to home than anyone had dared imagine. The search of the abandoned house intensified after Bruno uncovered the bloodstain. Lieutenant Ryan ordered a full forensic sweep, and as officers tapped along the crumbling walls and floors, a hollow thud echoed beneath a frayed, moldy rug. The team exchanged grim looks. Pulling the rug aside revealed a concrete slab discolored from age and moisture, but something about it felt wrong, lighter, unstable. With careful precision, the officers chipped away at the edges. Dust and debris clouded the air as the slab gave way to a shallow cavity barely a meter deep. Inside, wedged tightly, was a large, battered suitcase wrapped in layers of black duct tape. Even before it was fully extracted, the smell hit them, pungent, metallic, the unmistakable stench of death that no time could fully erase. Ryan steeled himself and cut through the tape. When the suitcase finally peeled open, even the most seasoned officers recoiled. Inside lay the remains of a young man, his body twisted unnaturally to fit within the cramped space. His clothing, though stained and tattered, was still recognizable. A work shirt with a faded name tag stitched above the chest pocket, Daniel. Martha's son had been here all along, trapped in a silent, decaying tomb while his mother waited for his next call. Forensic examination confirmed what Ryan already feared. Daniel had been dead for well over a year. The injury to his skull suggested a violent, deliberate blow. The gentle story Martha believed, the son working hard overseas, occasionally sending money and love, was a cruel illusion. The deeper horror settled in. Someone had meticulously constructed an entire false identity to maintain the lie. Video calls, voice messages, bank transfers, all faked, all tailored to keep Martha's suspicions asleep. Ryan stood in the middle of the ruined house, heart pounding, a sick feeling coiling through him. The mystery had mutated into something far darker than a simple murder. Somewhere out there, someone had puppeteered Martha's life with chilling precision. And now, with the real Daniel found, they were forced to ask the most terrifying question yet. Who had been pretending to be him all this time? In the days following the gruesome discovery, Bruno did something no one expected. Under the cover of a heavy rainstorm, he escaped the secured kennel at the police training center. Surveillance footage later showed his determined sprint across town, soaked to the bone, until he arrived at a modest house just a few doors down from Martha's. It was the home of Agnes, the quiet, seemingly kind woman who had often checked in on Martha during her loneliest years. When officers arrived, they found Bruno sitting silently at Agnes's front step, his wet fur clinging to his thin frame, his eyes fixed unwaveringly on the door. It was as if he knew this was where the truth hid. Agnes opened the door with trembling hands. Upon seeing the dog, something inside her shattered. She collapsed onto the front porch, sobbing uncontrollably. Hours of interrogation followed, but it was not the harsh lights or firm voices that broke her. It was Bruno's silent, accusatory gaze that stripped away every layer of her defenses. With her face buried in her hands, Agnes confessed. Her daughter, Nina, had loved Daniel from afar, a love that was never returned. When Daniel chose Emily instead, Nina fell into a despair so deep that it swallowed her whole. One rainy evening, overcome by heartbreak, Nina ended her life, leaving Agnes with nothing but grief and bitterness. Agnes, unable to find peace, blamed Emily for her daughter's death. Driven by vengeance, she lured Emily into a trap under the pretense of delivering a message to Daniel. Once Emily was under her control, Agnes held her captive, tormenting her psychologically in the abandoned house. When Daniel discovered Emily's location and tried to intervene, Agnes, in a fit of blind rage, struck him down with a rusted iron pipe, ending his life in an instant. Realizing the enormity of what she had done, Agnes devised a chilling cover-up. She buried Emily in Martha's garden and concealed Daniel's body in the deserted house. To protect her secret, she used faked videos, voice manipulation, and anonymous money transfers to create the illusion that Daniel was still alive abroad. As Agnes wept under the weight of her crimes, Ryan listened with a heavy heart. Sometimes he realized pain does not teach forgiveness. It festers, grows, and demands blood in return. The courtroom was nearly empty the day Agnes stood before the judge. There were no family members seated behind her, no friends offering comfort. When the life sentence was read aloud, she simply bowed her head in silence, accepting the weight of her actions without protest. As she was led away, Agnes cast one last glance toward the window where the morning light spilled in, a faint, almost wistful look, as if somewhere deep inside, she finally understood that some wounds could never be undone. Life in the small neighborhood slowly returned to a fragile normalcy, though nothing would ever truly be the same. Martha returned to her modest home, the garden now stripped bare, the scars of the investigation still raw in the earth. Her world, once anchored by routines and quiet hope, had been upended twice, first by the death of her son, then by the betrayal of someone she once trusted. Bruno, the faithful soul who had uncovered it all, stayed by her side. But the long months of stress, the poison he had survived, and the relentless weight of time had taken their toll. One crisp morning, as the sun cast a golden haze over the empty backyard, Martha found Bruno lying peacefully beneath the old mango tree, his eyes closed, his body still. He had slipped away quietly, without struggle, as if choosing his own moment to rest. With trembling hands, Martha wrapped his body in the soft blanket he had loved as a pup. She dug a small grave beneath the mango tree, her every motion slow but deliberate. When the hole was filled, she placed a hand-carved wooden sign above it. The words were simple but carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken emotions. He could not speak, but he once spoke the truth. Each evening after that, Martha sat by the tree, knitting small sweaters that would never be worn, whispering stories into the quiet air. In a world fractured by lies and cruelty, it was not the loudest voices that had delivered justice, but a loyal heart that had never forgotten, never surrendered to fear, and never stopped believing in the truth.